super excited for this conversation to have with Troy. Now, this Q&A has been a long time in the making, and one of the reasons why I really wanted to do this was because I wish so much that when I was first starting out, I met someone like Troy. I met Troy a few years ago, and Troy is an expert in sales. He is responsible for hundreds of millions of dollars in sales between him and the teams he's trained. And one of the things that stood out immediately, and I want to say this right away, because whenever I say to someone, he's an expert in sales, we get a certain image in our head. And this was the problem. Back when I was started getting into sales and I was looking at the training, and I'd get all the different trainings out there, go to seminars, get experts and coaches, and all of the things I was taught didn't align with me. They're very high pressure, over the top, kind of the typical things we think of when we think of sales. And you know what? They didn't work for me. And I still see that today, over a decade later. So much of the sales training out there is really not working for people. It's outdated. And as soon as I started talking with Troy and hearing his philosophy and hearing his approach, and I think you're going to get that very quick, he's not over the top, he's not super hypey, he's not high pressure. He's just a real guy looking to serve and looking to help, who happens to have a lot of knowledge and expertise in the area of sales. So I asked Troy to come on today and talk to us about how we can get referrals, because the most expensive thing to do in business is to try and acquire new customers. And this is where so many people focus, day in, day out, month in, month out. It's that grind of getting new people into the funnel to try to get new customers. But referrals is a great way to get new customers for free. You've already done most of the work. You're just missing a few things to push over that edge and start getting referrals flowing into your business. So please welcome Troy Steine here to talk to us about getting referrals. Welcome, Troy.
Thanks, Roger. It is really nice to be here with you. And hello, everyone. If you're listening live or if you're listening to this in the future as a recording, it's a real pleasure to be here and chat for a few minutes. Yeah.
Love it. And that's just a note for people watching. Feel free to...
Where would you like to begin, Roger? Do you want to...
Let's dive into it. You know, I talked a little bit about it, and I'd love to hear from your perspective, Troy. Really briefly, what do you think is the problem right now with people getting referrals? I see it, probably the number one question I see people asking over and over again is, why can't I get referrals? People are doing business with me, they like what I'm doing, but I'm not getting any referrals. So let's talk about that for a minute. All right, well, I'll wait a second for Troy to come back. But one of the things that I really find when people are first looking to get into doing sales and getting into doing referrals is they think that they need to overcome objections. They think they need to almost lead people down a certain direction. And if you're doing that in your business, if you're looking to get any kind of momentum going, I invite you to maybe change your approach, to shift the way you look at getting referrals and to shift the way you do it. And one of the things I love about Troy's approach is it's not about those high pressures. It's not about trying to lead people so you can pre-lead and knock down objections so you can lead them down a path. It's about being of service. So give me 1 second here and let me see if I can get Troy back with us. Maybe in the meantime, while we're waiting for a second, just so you know, if you see the page you're on, you'll see below there's a Facebook comments. feel free to enter any questions that you have into that comment section below, and I'll see them right away. Or you could also just email me at roger@rogerdeveau.com if you have any questions about sales, about referrals, how they work. If you have specific questions, maybe about something you're doing. Oh, here, I just got a message from Troy. Awesome, he's rejoining. One of the things I know about Troy is he's been in this industry for a long time. He has a lot of experience doing this. Here we go. We're back. All right. So, Troy, now that I've got your back, sorry we lost you there. What I was just saying was, one, I was talking about your unique approach, where it's not about leading people to a specific outcome and trying to force a result. And I was talking about the fact that you have a lot of experience in sales. You've been doing this a long time, working with a lot of different people. So why don't you just take a minute or two and tell us a little bit about your experience?
Sure. Isn't modern technology wonderful, everybody? I come from a background of 25, 30 years of really being involved in really every aspect of sales, marketing. Many of those years working in, you could say, the new home, the real estate development industry here on the west coast of Canada, and had a lot of experience to really learn about the right way and the wrong way of doing sales, and how to look after people, how to give them that customer experience. And going forward, I moved into doing training, consulting of my own, which I enjoyed a great deal. And I've learned that there is a really true way of working with people who are interested in what it is that you offer, your products, programs, services, and being able to really give them that valued experience as what I like to always call as a trusted advisor, and to really give people that concierge service, serve them and advise them. And if it's at all the right fit for them, that most people will take that next step with you. And it's quite different from all the garbage you hear out there about having to really force people to make a decision, the hard closing, the high ticket closing efforts. If you have a proven selling framework that you follow, proven selling framework, it's going to allow you to start working with better clients ongoing. And there's a whole variety of different ways to do that. One of the things that I know Roger and I were speaking around recently was what Roger said is that real importance about the people who are your clients now, the people that you've already worked so hard for and spent so much time on to give them the best experience. Those are the people who are perfectly suited to bring you referrals, more people like them. And so that's why we're talking about it today. So how's that for an intro?
I love it. And it's funny, why don't we stick on that a little bit? Because you talked about, and I know I want to do, we have a whole big in-depth conversation coming up talking about the sales aspect, because I love your idea of being that trusted advisor and how to go about it. But why don't we, before we get into a little deeper on referrals, Arlene has a question. Hello, Arlene, welcome. She's about to start building a sales team. What is the top 3 attributes I should look for in a sales resource? So while we're talking about this, and I think this is an actually very important place to look at, because when you're first starting, now's where you can really make the choice to set the stage for what kind of sales team you're going to have.
Yeah.
And so I know, Troy, you've got some thoughts on this, and you work a lot with sales teams. So what should Arlene be looking for?
Well, it's actually a really good question. And I've been asked that question on 3 separate occasions this week, that people are now looking to hire sales people or salesperson to help them in whatever it is they're offering. So Arlene, I would suggest it, if I may say, it really starts in the very, very beginning with you in terms of how do you want to be positioned in the marketplace in terms of what you're offering, and how do you want the experience to be for the people that come into your world? Because it starts right there, because anyone that you bring into your business that's going to represent you on the front line, the important thing is that they approach what it is they do for you with that philosophy, that they're in tune with who you are and what you offer. And once you get that straight, once you have the ability to have, whether it's one or more people selling for you, and they embrace what your philosophy is and how you want to treat customers, if you can start from there, everything becomes that much easier. And then you would move into, if I may say, you would move into really having a proper selling framework that you can immerse each of these people into in terms of who's selling for you. And that covers a wide variety of things. I know, as Roger said, we've got a lot to talk about, but first and foremost, what process will you use in terms of he or she selling for you? What is that experience going to be for each prospective client, each prospective customer that you have? And if you will be having a lot of conversations over the phone, if you'll be having a lot of conversations online, which in today's environment, in our wonderful world, obviously that will be continuing. So I would suggest that, with that said, there really are proven steps that you can put in place to help your sales person, he or she, experienced or inexperienced, whatever they are, really specific steps to take them from preparing for each sales call with things that they have to have in their environment to make it the most productive, meaningful experience possible. Making sure the mindset for your salesperson is in line, meaning that they're positive and proactive, and then as they go into the discussions, there's a whole variety of steps, which I'd be happy to share with you at some point, as far as pre-framing those sales calls and asking, discovering, listening, understanding, and then getting to a point in the conversation which, when you get to the end of your sales call, there's very specific ways in terms of moving forward from there. And it's not that typical ask them for their credit card or force them to make a decision. There are very specific, not really rules of the road, but very specific steps that you can take as you start a sales presentation, as you move through that, and as you get to the end, where it becomes really a seamless experience for the prospect. And
it's funny. I have a friend who's literally just went through the process of hiring a sales team. And he said something very similar to me, actually. He's like, in the past, I always looked for these top salespeople, these people who are already doing it, really good at what they're doing, and had these great resumes, if you will. And in the end, they underperformed for him, because what he found out was important was none of those things. In fact, sometimes those things could actually hurt, depending on, like you mentioned, your sales process. And that's what he said to me. He's like, as the most important thing is that they buy into what I'm doing and how I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And the rest, the sales stuff, I could teach. I can train them to sell. I could teach them how I do it. But if I get someone on board who believes in my mission and is very clear with what we're trying to do, and then I'm very clear with them on how I want it to be done, you can put almost anybody who's willing into that position, and they will turn out to be a great salesperson.
Arlene, are you at liberty to say any details about what services, programs you're offering, or what industry? We don't have to go into details, just out of curiosity, in case I might want to add something to that.
Well, it's funny. I actually know Arlene's business. Now, I assume, Arlene, are you asking about your event services hub? Where what Arlene's doing, especially with COVID, is she's putting together kind of a place for anyone looking to do events or any event services businesses where they can get on, and it becomes not only a place where people can go and search and find these really good local event services places, but they can also go and learn more about how to do events. So
Fantastic.
just in the meantime, we'll wait, Arlene. You can correct me
Yeah.
if that's not what
Okay.
you're looking at. But I believe then Arlene would be looking at getting businesses to get them on board and to get
Okay.
into the program to
Okay.
join the site.
You know, one thing I'll share that Arlene can listen about now or later is I mentioned to someone earlier this week, because as I mentioned, more than one person is asking about this question, you know, hiring salespeople. And this individual was asking, in addition, where do I find them? And I gave a suggestion that was a bit of a surprise for the other individual I was speaking with. And I suggested that in her case, she went to her circle of people she knew throughout whatever forum she was in, any group she was in terms of LinkedIn or Facebook, and whatever email connection, and made an announcement that she was looking for someone like this that to help grow her business. Instead of going to job boards or all of that other stuff, go within your circle. And that individual, without going into the exact details, but she has found 3, perhaps 4 very quality people that came either through people that she knew, meaning that she actually knew these people and they actually raised their hand to want to work with her, or people that are in her area of influence, and they introduce people to her. So sometimes that's a really, really effective way to do that. You know, a group that I'm helping now, in terms of helping them with their sales advising, all of that came about in that same way. The individual running that entrepreneurial group is someone that I grew a very close relationship with over the years, and it just evolved into this. So, Arlene, if you're listening, I would think that would be a good way to start the search. And then when you get to the point where you want to start immersing them into a sales framework, well, then there's certainly steps that we can take then to help you.
Now, I know.
Sorry, I rambled on there, Roger.
No, and it's perfect because I do want to dive into it, and Arlene gave me an idea, so let's go with it because it's a Q&A, so we let the people watching decide. Arlene said she was interested in hearing about your steps and methods, and so we kind of teased on it, and it really does lead into when you're getting referrals, and the sales process is an important part of it. So actually, Troy, if you wouldn't mind, what I'd love you to do is kind of briefly introduce us to what your trusted advisor method is. And what I mean by that is just your general sales philosophy and approach when you're looking to do sales. Because for me, I think absolutely in today's world, it is the way to do sales. I think people are going to get more results. They're going to be able to even charge more, and they're going to get more happy ongoing customers versus just closing that sale, which really does a lot of the groundwork and prep work for leading into referrals. So since Arlene's in that process of beginning to look for a sales team and probably just in that beginning phase of figuring out that sales process, why don't you just give us a little introduction to what your sales process is like and what your method is?
Okay. Well, first of all, it all begins with approaching sales, having that mindset to approach sales in a completely different way. And I say that because when you're selling in today's landscape, and especially now with what's gone on in this world of ours and going forward, people are looking for genuine help. They need someone there to really guide them the right way. And for anyone who has something to sell, it's important, as I mentioned earlier, to approach the sales process being yourself. Many people that I speak with do the sales themselves for a product, service, program that they're offering, at least in the beginning. And it's really, truly important that they recognize that they have to be themselves instead of trying to be something, not following this other stuff out there that teaches you to just ask for the order at this particular stage of a conversation and try to figure out whose personality someone is so you know what this clever thing to say or whatever. It comes down to, first and foremost, having the mindset that you are there to serve and advise. And that's where the term we've been talking about as a trusted advisor comes into play. And the other one I always recommend to people is, as you go into a discussion, to approach it as though it's that concierge experience for the person on the other end of the line, so to speak. And by doing that, and by following a framework, and I don't mean that you have a typed out script of what exactly to say at what point, but there's an overall outline which we can always share with you at some point that really guides you through pre-framing a sales discussion in terms of what the other person that you're speaking with expects to experience in this conversation with you. And by doing that in the very beginning, it really eases the atmosphere and it creates a collaborative discussion instead of someone trying to force something to do something. And
and sorry to interrupt you, Troy, but I think that is a very important point for people to get and understand, because I think so many of us, when we think of sales, we still think of a very specific thing, selling someone. And when we think of selling someone, we think of, we got to get that yes or no. We're getting on the phone with someone and we've got to close them. And I love what you're talking about, where you're talking about, yes, have an idea of the experience and where you want the call to go, but have a conversation. Be there to answer questions. And I'm going to use our live right now as an example. We have a set idea of where we want to go and what we want to talk about and teach, but we're also open to flow with the questions and to provide value and provide service, because these days people are so sick of being sold to. And we have 10 different emails in our inbox for whatever problem we've got, promising that they're going to solve it. If you take the approach that you're talking about, and Arlene, when you're looking for salespeople, I think this is also why it's so important to have people who believe in what you're doing more so than a salesperson, because when you get to just be yourself, have conversations with people, and provide value, answer their questions. Don't be afraid of them asking questions. Don't be afraid of objections. They're not something you need to overcome. They're something you get to talk about. Yeah. And when you build that connection and trust with someone, like Troy, you said, become that trusted advisor, you just separated yourself from everybody else out there who's trying to promise similar things to you, but trying to sell the person. You become that person that they feel comfortable going to with questions, and it changes everything.
And there are certain things, there's probably, without going into a 3-hour seminar on all of this, Arlene, but I will, 3 important things to keep in mind as the sales framework I always talk about is to really be prepared with having a list of, and whoever's selling for you, Arlene, to really spend focused, undisturbed time before you even have a sales call to do 2 things. One is to write out in as much detail as you can all the features of what it is that you're offering or selling, and whatever those features are. And with those features, all the potential benefits to someone who makes the purchase with you. And with that said, I always advise people to stay away from the word price or cost. Think about the word investment, because they're making an investment with you. And the people who are on the phone for you, Arlene, using that word investment instead of what the cost is or what the price is. It's a subtle thing, but it's so important. So features and benefits. The other thing, which we can go into great detail in terms of what the framework is all about, but for you to, because you know what it is you provide, Arlene, best, you know that best, is to think about, and this will be a really more of a living document, this is, think about all of the potential questions that someone may ask you, or someone who is having that discussion with a prospective client for you. What are all the questions that someone can put to you in terms of, what you offer, or like any questions? What you offer? Do you have a guarantee? Do you have a refund policy? How do you take next steps? Like, as many questions as you can think about, and then answer those questions before you even have a call. And what that will do, because you'll add more and more to that as you go forward, but what that will do by doing those two things, and again, for you, Arlene, and everybody listening, spend the time on this, because it'll serve you so well going forward. And what it's going to allow your salesperson to do is, when they're on that call, they'll be able to focus on the person they're speaking with. Everybody knows when someone is not paying attention, or they're just not focused as they should. But when you have those things at hand, it's a simple but very effective step. It's going to allow the person who is on the sales call to really focus without worrying that, oh boy, will I remember this? Or boy, what do I say then? Because they'll have those pages with you. Believe me, it's a practice I use to this very day, because it is so effective. And by doing all those things, it gets to that third point I wanted to mention, Roger, that you and I talked about last week, is the importance when someone is on a sales call with a prospective client, and they're going through this whole journey together on this phone call, whether it's 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, whatever it is to have the ability, and this is not easy for most people, but to have the ability to detach yourself from the outcome of that call. If you can do that, everything changes in terms of how you focus on the call, in terms of pressure on the call, and the person on the other end of the line, Arlene, who's inquiring about your services, they will feel that too. Tension's gone, and they'll make a decision that's right for them and then right for you. I could go on and on, Roger, but I just thought I'd share that.
I'll mention again, Troy and I actually have a huge in-depth conversation on the entire sales process coming up. But what I'll do is I'm going to blend one of Arlene's questions and a question from Dave into one, which is, when should you be looking at whether you yourself are doing the sales calls versus hiring a team? And when you hire a team, should it be commission, salary, a blend of both? What do you think?
Okay. Yeah, good questions. I've always advised people, I've done a number of one-to-one coaching in recent months, and these are for business people, these are for entrepreneurs, these are people who are very good at what it is you do, whether it's programs, products, courses, consulting, copywriting, you name it. You're very good at what it is you do. It's just that sales follow-up world is a challenge. But I always encourage, if at all possible, if you can do this, is to do the first handful of calls, 3, 5, 10 calls, whatever it is, do them yourself. Because it will give you an encyclopedia of information and knowledge that you can use in terms of when you work with a potential salesperson, in terms of, you'll discover things that you wouldn't have known. I can assure you, you wouldn't have known if you didn't do some of those calls yourself. And you'll be much more understanding and empathetic with the person you have selling for you, because you've been in those shoes for some calls. So that's what I suggest. You will know after that, if you've done a dozen calls or something, you'll know, yeah, okay, this is something I can bring someone in and really align with what I want to accomplish. Now, in terms of compensation, it's a big one, at least in my opinion. It's a big one. Everyone and their dog out there is saying commission only, commission only, commission only. And sometimes, in many cases, and people may like what I say here or not like what I say here, but in many cases, when it's commission only, it can create a wrong approach in sales, and it can create a forced approach. It can create an uncomfortable approach. What I recommend to people, this is what I recommend, is you can certainly do a commission only approach, but what I suggested to, it was an entrepreneurial group recently, that they brought in someone where, because their goal, as I would hope the goal is for everyone who's building their business, is to build a team and to build someone who's going to be with you for the long term. That's how I always approach things, is to provide a small amount on a monthly basis or quarterly basis, something that demonstrates sincerity. And I'm not talking a large amount, maybe something so someone is able to put food on their table, so to speak, and then a smaller commission level. You can always change that in the future. I have found that that has yielded very, very strong results. Roger, there's different ways to do that. There's different ways to, you can increase commission levels. But for many people that have done that, where they brought someone in, if your business is at a point where you can do that and you can provide something to someone, it demonstrates your commitment. It's going to be very well appreciated. And in many cases, they'll work even harder for you. And if you're selling something that, let's use an example, is a $5,000 program as an example, or a service, $5,000. And instead of paying a $1,000 commission, you pay a $500 commission or a $400 commission. That person will still perform very well for you. And then the bulk of those sales actually come to you instead of commission. So those are my thoughts, Roger. There's positives with both. And a lot of people I've worked with over the years have been commission only. But what I've seen with that is they've changed a lot in terms of who they sell for and what they sell. So
always really, jumping to the next compensation product.
And we can always make that work in terms of, if you have, comes back to what we're saying, if you have a system in place, a framework in place, and you have the right person, they can make a very good return on their sales efforts for you if they follow that framework. So, yeah.
And now I feel like you actually answered it. Genevieve was asking about what if, and I think this is in reference to you saying, get on and do the first dozen or so yourself, which I wholeheartedly agree with, by the way. I'm a huge believer that before you ask someone to do something, even if it's not your zone of genius, try as much as you can to do it yourself first to get a good idea of what's entailed in that role. That way your conversations with that person, that employee, that teammate, that commission salesperson, whatever it is, your conversations can be so much more real and so much more understanding on both sides, because you understand where they're coming from, you understand what they're dealing with. So I love that. But Genevieve asked, what if you're too uncomfortable or too afraid to get on the phone? And I think you covered that as well, where you really talked about letting go of the outcomes. And as soon as you release the outcome, you're no longer trying to get a sale on the phone. You're literally just trying to be of service to the person, to answer their questions and to educate them on the value that you bring, which again, you also touched on when you talked about using the word investment over cost or price. That not only has an impact on the person you're talking to or on the sales call, that has impact on you as well. The way you view your product or service, this is not a cost, this is not a price, this is not a yes or no sale you're trying to get out of someone. This is a long-term investment for them. This is something that's going to serve them, that's going to help them, that's going to solve their problem. And your job is just to have a conversation with that person to see if this is the right investment for them, one way or the other. And when you approach it that way, I'm naturally very introverted. Getting on a phone call is like the nightmare scenario for me. It was like the last thing in the world I'd want to do. But when I do this approach, it's the only way, frankly, I can do sales. It's the only way that works for me because everything else I do, and I've knocked on doors, I've done surveys to strangers in malls. Like I've tried all the things out there before I had someone tell me something like you are now. It doesn't fit. It doesn't, right. Yeah. I'm uncomfortable. And as soon as I'm uncomfortable, the person I'm talking to is uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree more because my mindset is it's the only way. If you want to create long-term client relationships, this is the only way to sell.
I agree.
What was the name of the individual that asked about being afraid of doing the calls? What was it? Genevieve. Okay.
Genevieve. I don't see a last name.
Great name. What I would suggest, this is what I've done in training with other people. There's a lot of value, a lot of strength in here. If you can find someone who you can practice in a safe environment, where you can go through and do 2 or 3 calls, or have someone put you on a what you could call like even a little hot seat or something where you actually have a discussion together in a safe environment. If you do a call and you record the call and then someone can kind of go through that with you and give you feedback, you might just surprise yourself. Someone I spoke with earlier last year he was over in the UK and he had a great service he was offering. I was so scared about getting on the phone and what do I say? How do I say it? And when? And what do I do to make someone buy? I just am so nervous. And he was very, very nervous. And I will say, not to, keep beating the drum, but I will say that when he and I walk through together a sales framework that is so genuine, and in his case, he understood, okay, this is how the calls can start and how I can kind of pre-frame the calls. So not only the client, but me too, know how the call is going to go. And then getting to that point, just following that framework of a discussion and really serving someone instead of worrying about a sale. And then what to do at the end of the sale, that detachment from the outcome. It transformed him. I think of him and I think of another fellow over in Singapore that spoke with me about some higher end consulting work he was doing. Same fear. And when you went through this, did it happen overnight? No, but in that fellow's case, it happened within probably 3 days after he had 2 or 3 calls. Everything changed. So Roger, I wanted to say that in terms of doing that type of safe environment as a practice. And I really truly say that there is a better way. And the reason why so many people are afraid of doing this is they haven't been introduced to another way, the genuine way of doing it. It's all this crap out there.
Well, you kind of just mentioned a moment ago where as soon as they got it, everything changed. And it's like, that was me. That was my moment. I mean, for years, I kept all the different sales trainings. None of it worked. And I had a disadvantage of being, when I first started out, I was in financial services. So for 4 years, when I first started, I was 20 years old, broke, no education, no success. And here I am, licensed and trying to get people to let me tell them what to do with their money. Obviously, it was a hard sell. So take the fact that I'm introverted, give me all of the sales tactics that are being taught out there, and my results weren't great. And
Yeah.
as soon as someone gave me permission and literally just said, stop selling, start teaching. Teach people, just start teaching people how money works in that case, because there's money, and release yourself of it. Just teach. And literally to the point where what I started doing was, instead of like a close at the end, I just told people, this is it. This is the information. Now you can go out in the world, and at least if anyone tells you something different than what I told you here today, well, maybe now, I'm going to go research it on my own. And because I knew if they researched, they'd find out that what I told them was true. And just that approach where when I released trying to close people and get them to sit down with me and get them to do business with me, and I just started serving and I just started answering questions and I just started helping people, my world changed because all of a sudden I enjoyed the process again.
Yep.
I was no longer afraid of sales because I wasn't selling. And on the flip side, people started actually doing business with me. And more importantly, referring me to people.
Yep. And
it changed everything.
Before we dive into referrals, I just want to say that, I, like you, as everyone can tell, I'm probably a few years older than Roger, but I started in the world of real estate, general real estate, 19 years old, just shy of being 20. Crazy, stupid, and it's crazy. Go out and try and convince someone, this kid trying to convince someone to sell a house that's worth lots of money. So I very quickly, after being exposed to all this other nonsense, evolved into serving people, just as you say, Roger, and then going into, in case anyone is curious, going into selling huge real estate developments, and really discovering that this approach worked. I mean, so much so that nominated more than once, winning the best salesperson in new home development, which was a wonderful achievement for you. It's many years ago now, but it allowed me to reinforce in my own mind that this is truly the way that you should be working with people. And I've had the pleasure of being able to, help others in that industry and many other industries, now helping a lot of people who are doing their own business, entrepreneurs, online, offline, trying to really make a difference for their own clients. Those are the people that I know, both you and I, Roger, those are the people that really resonate with us in terms of people that have a valued service and they just want to have that service, presented the right way. And it leads into, Roger, I don't know if you want me to head into a couple comments I have about referrals, but I just thought I'd share that. So.
Absolutely. And why don't we do that and jump on in? Because honestly, if I can have people walk away with one piece of information from all of this, hopefully it's just that we gave them that permission to throw all that other stuff in the trash. Forget all the things you've learned about overcoming objections and setting people up, and so that you can pre-dodge the objection and make sure it doesn't come up. And all this worry and thought and stress leads you, usually in most cases, to doing nothing.
Yeah, and I could talk for an hour on this, on the world of objections and what they really are, but we'll do that another day.
Yes, we will. So Troy, why don't you lead us into, we have the E.A.R.N method of earning referrals.
Yeah,
why don't you introduce us to that and talk about that?
Sure. As I talk about referrals, I always like to ask people, for their own business, whether you're starting a business, whether you have an established business, for people who are doing what it is they do and they've had past clients, there's a true gold mine there for you. But I asked them in the beginning to really think about what would it look like to you, anyone who's listening to this, what would it really look like to you to be someone who's actually getting referrals on a consistent basis versus the opposite of not getting referrals? Now, obviously, I mean, we all want that. We all want to have people sending high quality potential clients to us. And what that will do is when you get referrals, yes, it means you have higher quality potential new clients that are presented to you from someone that you have collaborated with before. It provides you greater long-term profit for your business. And you have that knowledge, that confidence from knowing you have this process in place, this system that you effortlessly follow to naturally bring in new business because of how you've looked after past clients. Versus when you don't have referrals, you're always in that constant starting over position without having that momentum in place. And you've got stress, you've got concern, you've got fears over, yet again, how are you going to find new business? How are you going to find qualified people to work with you? So the E.A.R.N method is really earning that right to ask for and receive referrals, E.A.R.N. And to give you an overview of it, and again, Roger, as you and I talked about, we have specific steps inside each of these areas, but what the E.A.R.N method stands for, and if anyone's listening tonight, I encourage you to take some notes on this. And just as I mentioned earlier about writing down the features and benefits of what it is you offer and writing out the frequently asked questions and answers, having that at hand, it's equally important to spend time, focused time, undisturbed time on these 4 areas. And the first one is E basically stands for earn. And 2 areas there. First of all, in what it is that you offer, to always strive to create and provide exceptional products, courses, programs, services. Make it the very best that you can make it. Don't cut corners. Create something that is a truly exceptional value for the people that work with you. And the other aspect there is when you earn it, not only with what it is you provide at such a high level, but you want to put in place what I call an exceptional customer experience. So at every stage of a prospective client moving into a client, what they go through in terms of working with you. So E is all about earning that right to have people refer to you. And A is asking. And when I say that, I talk about how to ask and what words to use. There are different ways to ask for referrals, different methods to use, whether that be in email, whether it be by phone, whether it be giving them special reports, videos, newsletters to keep in touch. And you're always asking, you're giving value, but you're always asking for that value referral. And when you ask, the words that you use always provide value, but always have the words be in your voice. You've created a relationship with these people. They know who you are. So always ask in that same way. Use powerful words, but use them in your voice. And then the R stands for reward. In terms of the things I'd like for you to think about here, and there's lots to talk about here in great depth, but it would be when to reward after someone has sent you a referral. How to reward. How do you express that thanks. And then the what is the reward? So you know when to reward, how you express your thanks for that referral, and then what do you provide them in addition to that method of thanking them. And then following up on the reward. And, you know, so often, I can't begin to tell you how many times someone has said to me, yeah, I got a new client. It's a really great person to work with. And someone actually sent them to me. And I just ask, I say, that's great. That is a significant part of your business. What did you do to acknowledge and thank that person? And in so many cases, they either didn't do anything or they just sent a brief thank you. And I will be the first to say, you really have to go an above and beyond way to acknowledge and thank someone for sending you a referral. They went out of their way. They spent time in their day, because everybody's so busy in this world, but they spent time to say to that person, you know what? I highly recommend that you should speak to Roger about this, because you will thank me for it later. So you really have to acknowledge that. There's many different ways we have in this system to show how to do that. But when, how, what, and then following up on the reward. And something that I encourage everyone to think about. I know I mentioned, doing it in an email and a phone and a video, a newsletter, things of that nature. Something that will stand out with the person that you're thanking. Trust me on this, because I received one about 3 weeks ago. I had referred someone to someone just as an introduction that they may be able to work together in terms of some copywriting work. I got a handwritten thank you note, plus something else, but a handwritten note from this person. When was the last time any of us got a handwritten note? It was so important for me to receive that. And did it reinforce, did it kind of lock into position that the next time I have potential referral that this person could help with, I'm going to send that person to him? Absolutely, it did. It's just that extra little effort. A handwritten thank you note was so powerful. So we have earn, we have ask, we have reward. And the last one, N, stands for nurture. You want to always maintain top of mind awareness with people that are either past clients in your circle of influence, people that know of you, have had experience with you. In business, there's this moving parade of interest out there where far too often people forget or neglect to really remember and reinforce relationships with people. So I encourage you to put a plan in place, which can be a very simple plan, but to nurture those referrals. And that could be in online efforts and offline efforts. And as you put together that plan, you want to also, with that plan, you want to have that timeline so you know when to nurture those referrals, not just how, but when. And, in many cases, a lot of people do that on a monthly basis, some a quarterly basis. But there's a proven way to set that up. So when you ask them in a certain way, you've got that timeline. And does this involve spending some time on this now? Absolutely. But if you spend focused time on this now, just like the other things that we talked about today, when you really dive into how to earn that referral, what is it you provide and how do you treat your clients and your prospective clients? Asking how you do that in a true, genuine way. What words are you using? And how you take care of people when they send you a referral. How do you show your appreciation in a truly memorable way? And also nurturing. Huge in terms of how do you put a plan in place to nurture referrals. So spend time on that. There's obviously a lot of things that we can talk about in terms of specific steps. But Roger, as an overview, that's really what the E.A.R.N method is about. And if anyone listening to this takes those 4 steps and spends some time on it, it will set you apart. You won't be another commodity out in the marketplace. You'll be someone that truly values their clients and their past clients. And it just falls right in line with how you work with your clients in the first place, that sales framework we talked about. Everything here is in synergy. It's all together. And every aspect of your other business, whether it's your sales framework, whether it's how you follow up with people, referrals, testimonials, it all plays a role and you all approach it the same way. I should stop now, Roger, otherwise I'll keep going for another hour. Does that help a little bit? Does that some clarity?
I love it. And something that you've said a couple times, and it's funny, over the years I've wondered this myself. And you talk about spending some focused time prepping on it now. And so many people are unwilling to do it. They're unwilling to focus on referrals and unwilling to even ask for referrals. And the idea of following up, nurturing, and continuing to ask about referrals, most people don't do. And I wonder about that a lot. And I know, because when you look at it, the time you spend trying to find the time and money that you spend trying to find a brand new customer is way more in effort, time, and money than you can spend if you just focus properly on building referrals. Mm-hmm. But most people don't do it. And I find a lot of it is because that first part you talked about, the E.A.R.N. People are uncomfortable with the way in which they sold somebody because they felt maybe they put a little too much pressure. Maybe they're not 100% confident with the cost or price of their product or service because they haven't looked at it as an investment for that person. And what I found is, if in that first interaction, there's a reason to be uncomfortable, both on your end or the person on the sales call, the referral part never happens. And I see it again and again with people who will get customers and they go, I don't get it. The person bought from me, but they didn't refer me to anyone. They won't send anyone my way. And oftentimes it's because people never even asked for the referral in the first place. And I feel like you could almost leave it just with the ask, let alone, you're right, absolutely keeping it in tone and in line with every other conversation you've had.
Yep. Not
just a copy paste way to ask for a referral that you found online or someone is teaching you, but even just asking. Right, most people don't even do that part. And the part that I really want to take another moment to focus on with you, Troy, if you don't mind, is when it comes to the reward. Because I feel like so many people, even if they do ask for the referral and then they get a referral, you're right, they might send a quick thank you. But again, I feel like there's a kind of a general uncomfortable feeling around it where people almost want to avoid talking about it. So they don't do anything else and they kind of leave it. So what kind of things should people be maybe thinking of doing as a reward for that referral? Is that, I know you mentioned a handwritten note, which I love that personal touch. And I know Sarah in the other room hearing that is dancing because she's one of those people who will pull out and write someone a note. It's just, it makes a world of difference. You're not wrong. But what other things can people be looking at? Is it more symbolic, like you mentioned? Is it monetary rewards? What do you think?
Well, there are a number of different things you can do, and I have found that, well, the majority of people that I know who run after kind of coming through a program and really remodeling how they reward people, they follow it. They spent the time putting it together and they follow it now. A monetary award or reward has been always very well received. It sometimes it depends on the business you're in. What is it that you're offering? Most times I would suggest that if someone was to receive some type of monetary value, they are very, very appreciative of it. I know someone in one particular industry who has very successfully provided gift cards from a particular online retailer that everyone would use, and that has worked very well for him. Something else to think about is to make it, depending on what it is that you're selling and at what price. If you have something at a premium offer, make the reward a premium reward. Something that people will get and they will notice, meaning it's not, and I don't want anyone listening to this to take it the wrong way, but it's not just another $10 or $20 coffee card. Don't do coffee cards, do something else. There's about 4 million of them spread across the landscape of the country that are never used. So, but make the reward something that they will take notice of. Does that mean a little bit more as a monetary reward? Yes. Does that mean a little bit more value in terms of a gift card? Yes. Something else in addition, which I've always enjoyed doing, is make it a surprise. They get it as a surprise. You never really said this is what you were going to do for them, but they get it from you. And that'll do two things. Of course, they'll be impressed with what you've done for them. And it will do something else on even a deeper level. It will bring such a connection with you and that person even further. And if you could combine that with a handwritten note, just imagine the impact that will have. So to not, because when you do that, if I've explained it okay, Roger, when you do that, that deeper level of connection from having it just arrive to them will prompt them to do it more often for you, because they genuinely want to help you. And it's just a subtle thing, a subtle way to do it. And so I don't know if that helps a little bit.
Yeah, that's perfect, because I think so many people are almost afraid to do that, and they're afraid. They're thinking, well, that's even more money out, and that's profit, and it's so expensive. And it's like, I completely understand that worry or that fear initially, but once you start to cultivate referrals, your marketing budget begins to shrink immensely. I mean, almost every single person I work with nowadays is a referral. I don't spend money on ads. I don't do print. I don't have business cards. Like, I don't have any of that stuff. So I'm actually able to put a lot of money in rewarding people when they refer me, because to me, that's my marketing budget. And never mind the fact that it saves me my marketing budget. Those people are so much better to work with. The person who referred them, they've already pre-qualified the person. The person knows what to expect. The person's excited to be reaching out to me. They want to work with me versus someone who's come through my marketing funnel where I now have to convince, although we talked about how I don't convince, but convince them to work with me. It's so much better. It's so much easier working with these referrals, that if you can spend the time to make your experience something that is wonderful, and then take that time and not only ask for referrals, but reward people when they do, and keep that time going and nurturing relationships. And this is, again, why we talked about sales a little earlier, not going for the yes or no, not trying to close someone, because that person might not be ready for you right now, or they might not even be a right fit. And if you try to sell them, you might get that no, you're done.
Exactly. Sometimes, with you saying that, sometimes, and if you hear a little dog in the background, he just came in from outside, everybody. So he's very happy, wondering where the heck I am. So, it's probably because it's his dinner time. But sometimes when you're in a conversation with people and you get to that point, advising them that they may not be the right fit for what it is you offer. taking that leadership role. And you want to advise them either way if you think they're the right fit or not the right fit. But sometimes taking that approach is such a powerful thing for someone to go through, especially if you've gone through and really approached that call the right way and used a real genuine process framework, and you say that to them. That's something that sticks with them. So I just wanted to throw that in, and there's specific ways to do that, but it can be very, very powerful. Yeah.
Well, you know what, Troy? Thank you so much for, again, taking your time, talking
great.
to us about referrals. I always have such a blast talking with you because, we agree on the approach to doing this on so many levels. I hope to anyone listening that if anything, Troy and I have just given you some permission to release yourself of the pressure, release yourself of the fear, release yourself of worrying about tactics and strategies, and just giving you that permission to be yourself and approach any sales conversations that you have with the intent of just having a real conversation, building a relationship so that you can cultivate referrals down the road. I mean, that's what it's all about. Anytime I'm on a sales call in any manner, even let alone a sales call, even in just online in my approach, if I'm messaging, emailing, my focus is referrals. So I'm just having a conversation with that person, being of service, like you mentioned, being that trusted advisor, so that I can set up a relationship of trust, of comfortableness, of comfort.
See, we both have challenge with words today.
We can get the referrals.
I've got one other thing I'll throw in, actually, and thank you for that recap, because it made me think something I wanted to mention is when you take this approach, speaking with prospective clients, and you take this approach in terms of your own mindset, getting prepared for calls, the process you take them through on the calls, detaching yourself from the outcome and doing that in very specific ways, what it does, and this is not only in the sales call, it's in how you ask for referrals, it's in follow-up, huge in follow-up, all areas of when you interact with clients or potential clients. By taking all of this approach and using a system like this, what it does, it eliminates neediness. And I can't begin to tell you how important that is, not just for the person you're speaking with, but for yourself. And Roger, you and I have talked, when you go through a discussion and you're not, everybody knows, everyone can feel, everyone just senses when someone is being needy, and it just doesn't work well. But by doing this, being genuine, you're not portraying that feeling of neediness, because that never evolves into any success, whether it's selling, whether it's life, relationships, you name it. Being overly needy does not help the cause. But by doing this, it eliminates that. So I wanted to make sure I got that in today. Thanks for the extra couple minutes.
Ending with the life advice. Release the outcome and trust that it will come to you. Thanks again, Troy. Nobby, thanks for joining us. Nobby said 90% of his new clients used to come from referral, much better value, and open to talking right from the start. Exactly. Working with referrals, it's such a better experience, especially if you're someone who is like me and is not comfortable selling or in the sales process. It transforms your life and transforms your world and transforms your results. So I know we went a little longer than I intended.
Oh, I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, Troy. I can't wait to do more of these with you. I know we have a couple coming up. And to anyone watching, Troy and I have an in-depth discussion coming up where we're just going to dive deep into sales and the whole topic of sales. So if you're interested in that, keep an eye out for the email or follow us on social media. You can even comment below. Let us know you're interested in that, and we'll make sure you get notified.
Great.
Thanks again, Troy.
My pleasure.